led up to the shooting, but we have seen the video that is circulating on social media. Our demand today is for those federal agencies that are operating in our city to do so with the same discipline, humanity, and integrity that effective law enforcement in this country demands. We urge everyone to remain peaceful. We recognize that there is a lot of anger and a lot of questions around what has happened, but we need people to remain peaceful. In the area, we have an unlawful assembly at this time. Minneapolis police have given multiple warnings for the crowd to disperse. We are asking for people to avoid the area and to leave if you are there. We have requested mutual aid from the Minnesota State Patrol and from all our local and county regional partners. We ask everyone to remain calm and to please do not destroy our own city.
I just saw a video of more than 6 masked agents pummeling one of our constituents and shooting him to death. How many more residents, how many more Americans need to die or get badly hurt for this operation to end? How many more lives need to be lost before this administration realizes that a political and partisan narrative is not as important as American values? How many times must local and national leaders must plead with you, Donald Trump, to end this operation and recognize that this is not creating safety in our city? As you'll hear from Director Sayer in just a second, we have seen these kinds of operations in other places, in other countries, but not here in America. Not in a way where a great American city is being invaded by its own federal government. I'm done being told that our community members are responsible for the vitriol in our streets. I'm done being told that our local elected officials are solely responsible for turning down the temperature. Just yesterday, we saw 15,000 people peacefully protesting in the streets, speaking out, standing up for their neighbors. Not a single broken window, not a single injury. Those peaceful protests embody the very principles that both Minneapolis and America was founded upon. Conversely, the mass militarized force and unidentified agents who are occupying our streets, that is what weakens our country. That is what erodes trust in both law enforcement and in democracy itself. So to everyone listening, stand with Minneapolis. Stand up for America. Recognize that your children will ask you what side you were on. Your grandchildren will ask you what you did to act to prevent this from happening again. To make sure that the foundational elements of our democracy were rock solid. What did you do to protect your city? What did you do to protect your nation? This is not what America is about. This is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue. This administration and everyone involved in this operation should be reflecting. They should be reflecting right now and asking themselves, what exactly are you accomplishing? If the goal was to achieve peace and safety, this is doing exactly the opposite. If the goal was to achieve calm and prosperity, this is doing exactly the opposite. Are you standing up for American families right now? Or are we tearing them apart? The invasion of these heavily armed masked agents roaming around on our streets of Minneapolis, emboldened with a sense of impunity, it has to end. This is not how it has to be. So, to President Trump, this is a moment to act like a leader. Put Minneapolis, put America first in this moment. Let's achieve peace. Let's end this operation, and I'm telling you, our city will come back. Safety will be restored. We're asking for you to take action now to remove these federal agents. Director Sayer.
My name is Rachel Sayer, and I am the Director of the Emergency Management Department for the City of Minneapolis. I took this job to keep us safe because I live here, and this is my community. We are doing everything we can to mitigate the impacts of this terrible situation. The city's Emergency Operations Center continues to be activated, as it has throughout the surge in federal agents over the last few weeks. We are tracking impacts and coordinating the city's response to this situation, which is having profound repercussions in our community. I can't underscore enough how much Operation Metro Surge is impacting our city. Families with loved ones detained and those who are afraid to be in public lest they become targets need help accessing the most basic necessities like food, housing, and rides to school. Businesses are shuttering and our local economy is severely impacted, which means families are suffering just as we were rounding a corner in our recovery. Many of our Minneapolis residents, my neighbors, my friends, my community members, are ceasing participation in public life, afraid to even go to the doctor. In response, the city enterprise continues to utilize our entire emergency apparatus. That means staff across departments, often around the clock, are putting their regular jobs on hold in order to respond to the impacts of Metro Surge. I want everyone to know there are numerous resources available to community members right now. We have mental health help available. We have food assistance, housing and rental assistance, legal help. We are sharing information about what to do if you are exposed to tear gas, pepper spray, or other chemical agents. And the state AGs and ACLU are collecting reports of rights violations. You can access these resources on the city's virtual resource center at minneapolismn.gov/ICE. Please share this information with your neighbors. We have help and we want you to be able to access that. My background is in international humanitarian response in conflict zones in Yemen, Haiti, Syria, Iraq, and Ukraine. What I've seen here is what I've seen there. A powerful entity violently and intentionally terrorizing people, making them afraid to go outside so they can't earn a living, so that kids are forced out of school. This has a lasting generational impact. People can't plan a single day of their lives because they don't know who is around the corner and if their family member or neighbor is about to be taken away. In these times, you see both the best and the worst. The worst is the terror and the feeling of helplessness. The best will continue to be our community's response. The way we are showing up for each other, that is in the absolute worst of times. We're showing up for each other in the absolute worst of times. I'll turn it back to the mayor. Thank you.
We'll open it to questions.
We are seeing an incredible volatile situation unfolding right now around that scene. Is there any communication right now between local and federal law enforcement or cooperation, or where do those efforts stand to try to calm what's going on down there right now?
I'll turn it to the chief to answer.
So the question was, there is an incredibly volatile scene in South Minneapolis right now, and the extent of communication with law enforcement agencies. We have established a command post that is led by Minneapolis Police, and there are representatives from all of the regional, local, county, and state organizations. We have had communication with Homeland Security, but they have not been able to provide us any specific details around the incident itself. We are responsible for ensuring the safety of people on the streets of our city, and we are doing everything that we can to maintain the peace right now, led by Minneapolis Police, but with the help of the Minnesota State Patrol, Hennepin and Ramsey County Sheriffs. Several suburban towns are in the city helping us with 911 calls. We have done an emergency recall of all sworn personnel back to duty. And we are working with the fire department right now to ensure that 2 small fires that were started in the area are safely extinguished. But again, we need everyone to avoid the area if possible, and the people who are in the area, we understand your frustrations. This is not sustainable. But we need people to leave the area at this time.
Is the National Guard involved?
We have communicated with the National Guard. They have been on standby for several days, and we have ensured the National Guard, as well as all of the local law enforcement partners, are aware of the situation.
Chief and Mayor, if I can ask you, this is a statement from Tricia McLaughlin, spokesperson for DHS. She said in her statement, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Seen here, they showed a picture of it. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid. Is that what happened?
So Minneapolis Police, the question was, you read a statement from DHS saying that a weapon was presented and there was attempts to disarm the person. Again, like I stated earlier, Minneapolis Police, as well as our supervisors, our watch commander, responded to the scene. We were not provided any public safety statement around the incident, what happened. We have since seen a video that is circulating online, like thousands of other people have at this time. So we do not know what happened prior to the recording that is online right now. I immediately called for the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to respond, to conduct an investigation. They are on the scene. I believe the FBI is on the scene as well. But I think the video speaks for itself. What I can tell you is we have identified this person, 37-year-old white male, resident of the city. The only interaction that we are aware of with law enforcement has been for traffic tickets, and we believe he is a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry.
Chief, can you clarify, was MPD cut out of this investigation? Has the BCA been cut out like we've seen from the 2 previous shootings?
The question was, has MPD been cut out of the investigation, and has the BCA been cut out? As I stated, I immediately requested the BCA to respond. It's my understanding that they are on the scene. I have not heard anything otherwise. There was initially some information was relayed to me over the radio that our officers were told that they were either not needed or could leave, and I gave a direct order to ensure that Minneapolis Police maintain the scene, as well as other state and local law enforcement.
Chief,
Can you talk about the
do you know
discrepancy
whether it
with
was multiple officers involved in the shooting or one officer, and do you know their whereabouts? Are they in custody at all or still on the scene?
So the question was is there multiple officers involved in the shooting? That is the preliminary information. That is our understanding, that it was more than one law enforcement officer involved in the discharge. And again, there is public video that shows several law enforcement officers in a scuffle with someone.
Can you talk about the discrepancy? The initial reports said that the victim here was 51 years old. The information that you have, where is that from?
So the question was, the initial reports said the victim was 51. The information that I have is we sent Minneapolis police officers to the hospital with the individual who was shot, and they have since identified that person.
2 more questions.
Do you have a name of the individual who was shot?
I do, and I'm not releasing it.
Are you able to talk, have you been able to talk with top ICE and Border Patrol officials to ask them to please be in on this, or have you talked to them, or have you been rejected?
The question was, have we talked with federal law enforcement to be in on this? We have had conversations with Homeland Security Investigations this morning. We are told they do not have any information to share at this time, but we will attempt to maintain those communications going forward.
Do you believe that?
Last question,
Do you
last
believe
question.
that?
Last question.
Do you believe that they have no information to share at this time?
The question was, do I believe that they have no information to share at this time? I don't know if the individual that we were in contact with would or not. This is a Saturday morning. And just like it was for us, it was a scramble to do an emergency recall and to get people to the scene.
All right, thank you guys. We'll have more information if we get any later throughout the day.
If you're just joining us here on CBC News Network, welcome. My name is Natasha Fatha, and we've been taking you live to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the chief of police, the city's mayor, and the director of emergency management have just given us an update. Earlier in the day, we started seeing reports, and now it has been confirmed by the chief of police that a 37-year-old white male, a resident of Minneapolis and an American citizen, has been shot and killed after an interaction with agents representing ICE. Now, this is as a result of the ongoing tensions that have been taking place in the city. There is a video circulating on social media and across multiple news platforms that reportedly shows the incident of the fatal shooting. Now, CBC News Network has seen the video. We have it. At this moment, we are opting to not show it until we can get further clarification on the situation around the footage. But it's just worth referencing that that is what the officials are talking about. You can clearly hear the frustration coming from all of those parties. What we are hearing also from the chief of police is that they are in touch with Homeland Security, which is the federal body, but they're not getting details about the incident itself. They were first alerted to the shootings just after 9. We are getting confirmation that it was more than one officer that was involved in the discharge of firearms that would have led to the death of this individual. The police know who this person is who was shot and killed, but they're not releasing the name at this point, and no clarity given as to why they're not offering any further information. The chief of police is saying that that they are asking the federal agents to use discipline and humanity as they continue their work. We heard from Mayor Jacob Fry that this is having the opposite effect of what the president would want, and he's asking President Trump to take a moment and say this is a moment where you can act like a leader. But perhaps the most poignant comment came from the emergency management director, Rachel Sayer, who said she's worked in emergency management capacities in Syria, Iraq, Haiti, and Ukraine. And she said, what I saw there is what I'm seeing here. So take that into mind as we continue our coverage of this breaking news story. I want to turn to our colleague, Jagruti Dave, who is in Washington right now. She's following this story for us. Lots of moving parts in this story. Jagruti, over to you.
Yeah, Natasha, as you heard there from the chief of police, they say that they are not getting information from the Department of Homeland Security, that the information that they had to go on was the social media footage, the video that you were referencing there. Department of Homeland Security has posted their account of what happened on social media. Let me just take you through what they've said. They said, we are aware of reports of another shooting involving federal law enforcement, and we are working to confirm additional details. We ask the public to remain calm and avoid the area. Sorry, that is the statement from the city of Minneapolis. I beg your pardon, from the DHS, that officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol with officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun seen here, and they posted a picture of this handgun below in that social media post. They say officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted, and they're going to give more details. There is going to be a press conference with Border Patrol and ICE. It should be happening anytime now if it's not already started. They said that, back to the DHS post, fearing for his life and the lives and the safety of police fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but was pronounced dead at the scene. They say the suspect had 2 magazines and no ID. Of course, this is a city that's been roiled by protests in the last in the last 2 weeks or so, sparked more so by the shooting of Renee Good 2 weeks ago, a woman, an American in Minneapolis, and there have been protesters as most recent as Friday. Protesters bracing the freezing cold to make their displeasure at the presence of ICE agents known in the city.
That covers so much of what we just heard, and leading up to this moment, we are waiting for ICE agents and federal agents to have that press conference. That's supposed to start any moment, and we'll take that live. But you've mentioned all of these events leading up to today's tensions and what the police are classifying as an illegal gathering at this moment. So as we're watching this story unfold, there's still a lot of reaction coming through in these early moments of this latest incident. What are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, I think most immediately we are seeing reports of clashes between protesters and federal agents. We're hearing reports of tear gas being deployed against protesters. As you mentioned there, you know, the head of the emergency department of Minneapolis there in that press conference, comparing what she's seeing on the streets of Minneapolis to war zones like Ukraine. Mayor Jacob Frey also making that similar comparison, saying this is an invasion by the federal government of a great American city. You've heard also reactions from lawmakers. This was before this press conference, early on when we first heard reports of this incident. You've got the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, who was talking about an incident that had occurred, saying that he had spoken with the White House after another horrific shooting by federal agents this morning. Minnesota has had it. This is sickening. The president must end this operation, pull the thousands of violent, untrained officers out of Minnesota now. You're hearing similar remarks from Democratic lawmakers who want ICE out. Mayor Jacob Frey in that press conference really summing up all of those sentiments coming from Democratic lawmakers, saying that they appealing to the president directly, Jacob Frey did, calling on him to end this operation, this immigration crackdown that has seen the deployment of ICE agents in cities across the United States that has come to a head in a really serious way in Minneapolis.
Journalist Jagruti Dave joining us from Washington. Thank you, Jagruti. And if we can, ICE officials or federal agents and federal officials are giving us an update on the situation in Minneapolis. Let's listen in.
Some of those brave men and women of Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security law enforcement join me here today to show support for all federal law enforcement who have been under constant attack in Minneapolis for weeks now. This morning was no different. At 9:05 a.m. Central Standard Time, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien, Jose Huerta Chuma. You can see this illegal alien on the screen to my left and right. That is Jose Huerta Chuma, whose criminal history includes domestic assault to intentionally inflict bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. During this operation, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The agents attempted to disarm the individual, but he violently resisted. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, a Border Patrol agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but the subject was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 loaded magazines and no accessible ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Then, about 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement. Crowd control measures have been deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. This situation is evolving, and more information is forthcoming. The officer was highly trained and had been serving as a Border Patrol agent for 8 years. The officer has extensive training as a range safety officer and less lethal officer. As mentioned, this is only the latest attack on law enforcement. Across the country, the men and women of DHS have been attacked, shot at, doxxed, had their family members threatened, and, as we have seen, more than 100 vehicle rammings over the past year against federal law enforcement. We will not allow violence against our law enforcement officers, and we need state and local help, state and local law enforcement, to help us coordinate to get violent criminals off the streets. Mayor Fry and Chief O'Hare just a few minutes ago did the opposite of that by omitting the fact that the suspect had a gun and magazines full of ammunition. In what looks like a situation, again, where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. I want to reiterate what President Donald Trump, Secretary Kristi Noem, myself, Director Marcos Charles, and so many others have said time and again. If you obstruct a law enforcement officer or assault a law enforcement officer, you are in violation of the law and will be arrested. Our law enforcement officers take an oath to protect the public. We go to work every day to protect our friends, our neighbors, and our fellow citizens. The fact of the matter is that the law does not enforce itself. It takes men and women who are willing to risk their lives to enforce it. The men and women of CBP and ICE law enforcement are highly trained professionals who love this country and do this work because they want to leave their kids and their grandkids a country that's safe and secure. Questions?
All right. One question. First question, when did agents learn that he had a gun, and did he ever brandish that weapon at agents?
Allie, this situation, again, is evolving. This situation is under investigation. Those facts will come to light. This particular incident is being investigated just like we investigate other similar incidents like we've done over the past several years. It's in the hands of professionals. Those facts will come to light.
All right, going on to the next question.
So, did he have an additional gun, or was the gun moved from the scene? And I watched the video from start to finish of that woman who was wearing the red jacket, and it doesn't seem like he pulled the weapon at any point. So, did the account come from the agents? Did they say that he pulled the gun before, during, after? When does the gun come out?
Again, this situation's evolving. This is under investigation. Those facts will come to light, but let's take a look at the gun. You can see the gun here on the screen there that individual possessed. It appears to be a semi-automatic, high-capacity type, possibly a Sig Sauer 9mm.
All right, no more questions. Sorry, no more questions, sir.
Commander.
Okay, well, there you have it. No more questions. Certainly, there are still a lot of questions that need to be answered, but that was an update we just received from Greg Bovino, the U.S. Border Patrol commander, related to the incident that took place just after 9 o'clock this morning local time in Minneapolis, where another individual has been shot and killed by Border Patrol agents. In this instance, we know from the Chief of Police of Minneapolis, this is a 37-year-old male who's a resident of Minneapolis and an American citizen. What we're hearing now from DHS is that they were in the process of arresting or detaining an operation against an illegal person who was in Minneapolis, and that is when this person who was shot and killed approached them, they say, with a semi-automatic rifle, and they later found out he had 2 fully loaded magazines. They said that this person did not have ID accessible, that they felt that there was a threat to the federal agents, and as a result, fearing for their safety, the agents then subsequently had to partake in this shooting incident where the 37-year-old man was killed. The person who fired the first shot, that officer, according to DHS, says that he has 8 years of experience. This was, they say, an attack against agents, and this person wanted to, quote, massacre law enforcement. He's accusing, Greg Bovino is accusing the mayor of Minneapolis as well as the chief of police of ignoring the fact that the man was armed and that he had these fully loaded magazine weapons. We are also getting information now from U.S. President Donald Trump. He's been posting a lot on social media today, and he's just posted again on this situation in Minneapolis. Forgive me, folks, we don't have it on the prompter. I'm just going to read a bit of it. He's saying the gunman's gun was loaded with 2 additional full magazines and ready to go. What is this all about? Where are the local police? Why weren't they allowed to protect ICE officers? The mayor and governor called them off, ? It is stated that many of these police were not allowed to do their job, that ICE had to protect themselves. Not an easy thing to do. He goes on to gripe much more about some of the corruption allegations that are being investigated in the state of Minnesota. But this is a major development in this ongoing story we've been following for you about ICE agents and how they are operating in the state of Minnesota, more specifically in the city of Minneapolis. And now 2 people have lost their lives as a result of agent-related shooting. So there is an investigation taking place that has also been confirmed by DHS, and there's been a lot of reaction, and it is not helping to quell the tensions in the state. There are still protests taking place right now in those frigid temperatures in Minneapolis, and in fact, the chief of police has said, please disperse. One of those protests is an illegal gathering, and they need to disperse. There's a lot of fear that this could erupt into something much more serious. Minneapolis has seen its fair share of protests that turn deadly and violent. We're also waiting to hear from the governor, Tim Walz of Minnesota. That is meant to come in about 10 minutes' time. Okay, folks, Tim Walz is talking, so let's listen.
Our federal government. Minnesota's justice system will have the last word on this. It must have the last word. As I told the White House in no uncertain terms this morning, the federal government cannot be trusted to lead this investigation. The state will handle it, period. Let me say something else, and this is critically important. All of us understand what happened this morning and the tragedy of it, and my deepest sympathies to the family of a 37-year-old Minnesota resident, a lawful firearm concealed permit carrier, something that I've been lectured to by Republicans for decades, that is not only your right, it's your duty. We know that the potential to further inflame tensions is high, and to Minnesotans, there's a difference. We want calm and peace and normalcy back to our lives. They want chaos. We cannot and we will not give them what they want by meeting violence with violence. Minnesota and our local law enforcement, as you have seen, have done everything possible to de-escalate. Local media has reported extensively on the cooperation to de-escalate this situation. Donald Trump, I call on you once again, remove this force from Minnesota. They are sowing chaos and violence. We've seen deadly violence from federal agents again and again and again. But in contrast to that, on these frozen streets, what you witnessed yesterday was the best of Minnesotans, peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights. And I attended in the church basement hundreds of Minnesotans from all faith packing care packages for families that have been ripped apart. Despite the horrific acts by this federal government, Minnesotans are standing up for the rule of law. They're protesting loudly and urgently, but peacefully. It must stay that way, Minnesota. Minnesotans are witnessing, and we're creating a log of evidence for the future prosecution of ICE agents and officials responsible for this. They're helping their neighbors. They're walking their kids to school. They're feeding families. I salute their courage and their restraint. And I call on all Americans to see the decency that this state is exhibiting and the horrific cruelty, unprofessional, absolute abomination that is passing for what these ICE agents are doing on our streets. They think they can provoke us into abandoning our values. Well, they're dead wrong. We'll keep the peace, we'll secure the justice with our neighbors, and we'll see this occupation ends. Minnesotans and Minnesota law enforcement that continuously is being denigrated by this administration will continue to be the adults in the room, the professionals in the room, the decent human beings in the room that will keep the peace. With this, I'd like to turn it over to Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson to update you on the situation as we know it. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Bob Jacobson, Commissioner of Public Safety for the Department of Public Safety, and again, it's my honor to serve in that position. A man was shot and killed this morning in Minneapolis. I want to pause and remember what cannot get lost in this moment. A man died. His family and friends are feeling unimaginable heartbreak and trauma. And I know Minnesotans and I know our community will rally around this man's family and friends to support him. I also understand clearly that people are upset. They're scared, they're confused, and I want to assure you that this state's public safety officials and our local law enforcement partners are doing everything in our power to get answers, to help return a sense of normalcy back to our communities. You have the right to demonstrate peacefully. We recognize that demonstrations are often driven by strong emotions, beliefs, and a desire to be heard. But please, please remain peaceful. And I want to say it again because it is important and it is critical. Peacefully demonstrate. By doing so, you help local authorities to get answers. You help us to do our investigations. By remaining peaceful, you help ensure nobody else may be killed or injured. The thousands and thousands of people who gathered yesterday in Minneapolis proved that Minnesotans can make their voices heard peacefully, and they can do so without violence, and they can do so without destruction. And state resources are available and ready to support our local law enforcement partners as requested. And those resources include the Minnesota State Patrol, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and the Minnesota National Guard. With that, we'll stand for questions.
Ken Gerdau with Care 11. Governor, you've made this request before. Is there any reason to believe that it will be answered differently? Have you had any conversations with the President, with the federal government, and is there any indication that they are going to pull out or back down?
Well, I spoke twice this morning shortly after I received the call of this shooting. I spoke with the President's Chief of Staff, and first request was to get her people out of there, to get these federal agents out of there. They were going to cause more chaos. And second call is, with no uncertain terms, that we will investigate this. We will not be stonewalled. What we've already seen, and you saw it this morning, before any investigation is done, you have the most powerful people in the federal government spinning stories and putting up pictures, and unrelated people who we don't know anything about, and a picture of a firearm to try and spin a narrative. And I ask Americans, this will end when enough Americans say this will end. Do I have any confidence Donald Trump will do the right thing? No, I don't have a lot of confidence Donald Trump will do the right thing. I do have a lot of confidence that the majority of the American people will do the right thing. And I think there cannot be very many people across this country looking right now, after all the reporting that's been done, after everything that's been said, under the pretense that they are here about immigration reform, and quit referring to these people as law enforcement. They are not law enforcement. We have law enforcement who do an incredible job. And to listen to Greg Bovino denigrate the work of our people who are out there cleaning up their mess, no, I don't have a lot of confidence that he himself will do it. But here's what I do have confidence in. There's a whole lot of Republicans, for whatever reason, cannot find their spine. But they might find the ability to know that they're not going to win another election as long as they live, unless they stand up for what's right, and stand up for the rule of law, and stand up for human decency, and that's the moment.
So then, just a follow-up, because then if that is not the case, what are the people of Minnesota supposed to do who are in the middle right now? Because if they do Stonewall, and you're trying to investigate, is that forcing?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And look, I speaking to the people of Minnesota right now, I hear that scream from you, and I'll continue to plead and ask you for peace. And I know the answer is, you ask us for peace and we give it, and we get shot in the face on the streets coming out of a donut shop. We cannot give them what they want. I don't know how to say this in so many terms, to watch the madness that we've witnessed over this last week coming out of the White House and what it's doing here. My confidence is, and I say it to Minnesotans, as I've said, exercise your First Amendment rights, speak out, bear witness and document legally. But I understand the risk in that, and I understand the courage that it takes to have people out there doing this. Thank God we have video, because according to DHS, these 7 heroic guys took an onslaught of a battalion against them or something. It's nonsense, people. It is nonsense and it's lies. So my confidence is this, Minnesotans. You know who you are, and you demonstrate it every single day, and we damn sure know who these people are. The American public knows, and this needs to be the event that says enough. Go ahead. No, I'm up front.
Governor Carolyn Cummings, WCCO, either you or Commissioner Davidson speak to the fact that you talk about you don't trust the federal government to handle this investigation. We know with the Renee Good shooting, BCA said that they were blocked from accessing evidence. Has there been any suggestion that BCA is not allowed to do this investigation? Do you have officers on the ground doing the investigation right now?
The question was related to whether or not the BCA is on the ground currently with the investigation, and a reference to previous investigations that the BCA have attempted to be a part of. What I'll tell you right now is that we no longer have BCA agents or public safety, state patrol, or Minneapolis on the ground at that crime scene.
Is that an instruction by the federal government, or did you pull your agents out?
What I will tell you, and not to get further into the investigation, but DHS pulled out of the scene, leaving that to Minnesota State Patrol, Minneapolis. We did not have enough resources to be able to hold that ground safely, and we had to leave that scene because of the number of people that were available and the safety of those in the public and the safety of our teams. We were able to get there, but at that time we were not able to hold that scene to do a crime scene investigation. I can't talk any more about those details.
Who is handling the investigation, if not either DHS nor state officials right now?
We'll have more on that, but the BCA is engaged and involved, and we are working at the request of the Minneapolis Police Department on this, on the scene and in this investigation. So we are there, we're available. We want to make sure that we continue to work on this and engage with our federal law enforcement, but at this point, we don't have anything more to share about the crime scene. Again, we were not able to hold it. We wanted to make sure and keep people safe, but federal law enforcement left the scene and left us there.
Governor Ernesto, with the New York Times, have you activated the National Guard? I know that the Sheriff of Witt has requested for additional assistance. Can you tell us whether they're going to be playing a role in keeping
Yes, the answer is yes, we have, as we said last week, and we staged those troops. I'll have General Menke talk about where they're at, and again, use this as an opportunity to stress to Minnesotans the frustration you have, and as you saw this, they killed a man, created chaos, pushed down protesters, threw gas indiscriminately, and then left the scene, and then we're left to clean up. I understand the anger. I understand trying to parse who were the law enforcement on the scene when you got there after a man was killed is difficult for folks who are out there. But I can't stress enough, our goal, and I'll have General Menke talk about what the role of these Guard troops are in conjunction with incredible work from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, from mutual aid across, and of course the State Patrol, of trying to get to the point where what we're saying is we can handle this and Minnesotans can express their First Amendment rights and have our folks on the streets and get these people out of here. And so, John, if you want to talk a little bit, but the answer is yes, there's activated. He can talk to you about numbers.
To be clear, that they're activated different than having them staged.
Yeah.
So the question is, what's the National Guard doing right now? So we have, we have been on state active duty for over a week. So we've had soldiers prepared in the metro area to respond in a much rapid manner than if they were not mobilized. So we have a request from the Hennepin County Sheriff to support them, and that is to help them free up additional resources for other work that they need to do. And we have started coordinating with them this morning on that. And that first area of support will be assisting them with their requirement to provide security to the Whipple building. So we'll be helping them there. And then we are in parallel planning with other organizations within the state of Minnesota, to include the State Patrol, the Minnesota DNR, and other local agencies to render assistance if requested.
Could you say how many are now employed?
I would say that the number that we have is adequate for the requests that we have right now, and I will also tell you that we are bringing more resources that will be able to respond in a timely manner that are not fully mobilized yet, but we are mobilizing more soldiers as we talk at this time. I'd like not to get into specific numbers for an operational security standpoint, but right now we have all the resources to meet the requests that we have.
I would note on this one, too, that we'll be billing the federal government for the cost of the National Guard because they are incurring the costs that are falling on us by their reckless actions. Yes, sir.
You alluded to this earlier, but are you rejecting the narrative that has been presented by federal officials that this man, this 37-year-old citizen of Minneapolis, posed a threat to these agents? And are you rejecting the idea that he played some role with the weapon and leading to?
I'm rejecting the rush to judgment within 15 minutes of this, which they did last time. That's why you need to have a fair investigation. And that's why a video can show one thing, but what happened beforehand. But they already will slander this individual. They've already made this the case. And I will just say you will all start to see it, and some of you probably have. There's multiple angles of this. And I'll go back to what we talked about before. They're telling you not to trust your eyes and ears, not to trust the facts that you're seeing in front of them. And at some point in time, your reporting, and I think the reporting this week has been spectacular across Minnesota, that there's not two sides to every story. But in this situation, what I'm saying is we need to have a fair investigation, understanding what's happening, and held accountable. We continue to hear, and we heard it from the Vice President, that these folks can do whatever they want. They can have full immunity. And what I'm telling you is they will not. There will be justice to Minnesotans. Continue to gather the information. So I won't say where it is because I think it's irresponsible to make that judgment. But what I see with my eyes and what you're going to see with your eyes makes that pretty hard to believe. And I would imagine as a federal officer, they would have come out and sounded like these professionals sound and say, we need to gather the information, we need to gather all the facts, we need to put them forward, and then we can make some informed decision based on the fact. They've written the narrative already. And the audacity to critique the police chief of Minneapolis after what work that those heroic officers are trying to do, and to be critiqued by this guy, I mean, I don't know, I've said it a lot, but America, as you're listening, enough is enough. Enough is enough of this. End this. End this. And we see them moving to Maine. If you're in Boston, you're in Chicago, you're in Philly, you're in Miami, it doesn't matter. We can't live like this. Our children are in trauma. A 5-year-old, you saw the picture, the bunny hat and the Spider-Man. These are not like some narrative to throw around, to parade around in some coat you had made and act like you're a tough guy or whatever. These are people's lives, and we have rule of law. So I'll let the investigation play itself out. We will do our best to find it, but I don't know, you kill a man and then you just leave your law enforcement, you just leave him. Is there a single case in American history where you just like walk away and say, I guess that just happened and we're not going to clean up our mess? I'm proud of Minnesotans. I'm proud of law enforcement here and our partners, and we'll get to the bottom of it. I think we have time for another one. So, yes, ma'am.
Bring number with you guys to Channel 5. Vice Commander who said in the press conference within the hour that they're calling on state and local law enforcement to, quote, help coordinate to get violent criminals off the street. What's your response to that request?
I'm better off to let these guys, the professionals, I have my thoughts.
So the question was, what are we doing to assist federal law enforcement on getting violent criminals off the street, if I understand the question?
Yes, Greg Levino said that in the press conference. He was calling on state and local law enforcement. So what is your response to that?
State and local law enforcement are always ready and willing and able to arrest violent offenders. We do not stand down from that, no matter where we get that information from. If there are violent offenders or violent criminals or violent crimes, we will investigate and we'll bring those to justice. If the federal government would like to work with us, to continue to work with us as they have in the past, to locate those violent offenders, we are always open to those discussions and always willing to assist. We do not ignore that. We are ready and able, and we do that. All of you as part of the media hear us arresting violent offenders all the time. We have not stood down. That is our mission. The federal government is not alone in arresting violent offenders. State and local law enforcement does that every day at great risk to their life, at great risk to the community. We do it because we want a safe Minnesota, and the federal government is not the only one to do that.
Okay, folks, once again, we've been taking you live to Minneapolis, where we've been getting an update this time from the governor of the state, Tim Walz, as well as Bob Jacobson, who is the public safety commissioner for the state. This has been an unbelievable day in the city of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota, where a 37-year-old man who is an American citizen and a resident of Minneapolis has been shot and killed once again during an altercation with ICE agents operating in the city. Here's what we know at this stage. There is an investigation that is going to take place into his shooting death, but what we just heard from Tim Walz, the governor, is that he does not trust the federal authorities to carry out that investigation. He says they've already written the narrative, and he wants the state to be in charge of the investigation. So he's also asking once again for the President of the United States to remove these ICE agents from the city, but he was quickly questioned on that, and he said, no, I do not trust President Donald Trump to do the right thing. And he said he doesn't trust Greg Bovino, the U.S. Border Patrol commander, who we heard from earlier in the day, to do the right thing. Now, in reference to him saying that they've already written the narrative, part of the reason why the governor is saying that is because that man who was shot and killed, the federal authorities are immediately coming out and saying that this is a man who wanted to massacre law enforcement. The motivation of that person's actions have not been established at this point. This just happened a few hours ago, but the federal authorities have already said why they think he was there, because of the weaponry that he had and because he was carrying fully loaded magazines. Much of this still needs to be investigated and clarified, and this is part of the discrepancy between fact and fiction when it comes to stories like this coming out of the United States. So we're trying to decipher what is in fact happening. We also know that the National Guard have been deployed. They've been there for a week in a supportive capacity for local police because tensions are so high. It is not just the death of this one 37-year-old today. There was also Renee Good, another 37-year-old woman in Minneapolis who was shot and killed. We also know of a 5-year-old boy who was detained by ICE. And earlier in the day, we learned of a 2-year-old toddler that may have been taken into ICE custody. This is the third shooting that's related to ICE agents in the city of Minneapolis. So what you're seeing on your screen now are the protests that are ongoing, some that are legal, some that are illegal. At least one is illegal. And in fact, the chief of police came out earlier and said, please go home. It is not safe at this point for you to be outside. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of fear that people are getting to a point where this could explode into riots and where violence may take to the streets, the violence beyond what we've already seen take place today. The President of the United States has come out with a statement clearly on side with federal agents. Here's another point of view of those protests taking place. Even though many people have been told to go home, stay home, they're not listening. And the governor says he understands, but leave this in the hands of the authorities of the state and the city who are trying their best, he said, to clean up the mess being made by these federal agents. And he said, stop calling ICE agents law enforcement. He says they are not law enforcement. So as you can see, multiple perspectives on this story. We're going to stay on top of all of this for you. A huge breaking news story coming out of the United States. You're watching CBC News Network.